Ladies first.
Ladies first.
So I'm Kristen Daukas. I own Say Anything Media, which is a boutique digital marketing agency. And in addition to that, I have my fingers in a few other pies, one being the upcoming Content Creators Conference, which is a concept I developed several years ago and somehow managed to rope Rob into being a cohort with me. So we'll have more information on that, but that is going to be focused on anyone who creates content, whether you're a blogger, a podcaster, however you produce content. We are setting up a conference to give you the tools and the information and the support that you need. So look out for more information on that. And that's Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Ainbinder, and I'm principal of a digital marketing agency called Why People Click. We focus on helping companies, small to medium size, with their Google AdWords and SEO. In addition to that, I have my fingers in a few other pies as well, and one of them happens to be Content Creators Conference. Kristen roped me in a few years ago. Life happened, and we're back with the reboot of the virtual edition of this effort.
All right, so we'll get started. So what we're going to focus on today is more of an overall general approach to content creation. So we call it 5 key moves. So we're going to give you 5 key things that you should be focusing on in creating content. And we'll just be doing this tandem.
Yeah.
So the first move is to find your niche. And when people come to us, especially at the very beginning, they are looking, what we have found recently is that the very general type of content creation is too broad of a spectrum. So finding your niche is finding what you're passionate about in order to be, not to make it hard on you. So it's work smarter, not harder. So doing that, and I don't think you guys can see these bullet points, but the most important thing is, what are you passionate about?
Yeah. What are you passionate about, and what are you knowledgeable about? And where do those two things intersect? I think that's really something to think about as you begin to create your content. You're going to be in this for a while as a content creator, so it's got to be something that you're passionate about and you're knowledgeable about.
It'll make your life easier, because one of the hardest parts, and I know, speaking personally, when I'm working with clients, if I'm creating content for them, if it's not a topic that I know a lot about, I'm going to have to work that much harder to do the research, to create the content and make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, because if I'm representing them, I need to know what I'm talking about. However, if it's something you're passionate about, whether it's photography, whether it's art, whether it's fashion, whether it's cooking, travel, etc., it's just going to come naturally to you. And when it comes to you naturally, it's going to sound authentic, which is another thing that we're going to talk about in a couple of slides. The authenticity of it is what's going to resonate with your audience.
Yeah, and I think, this last point is, if you want to make money, how competitive is it? Certainly, there's room for everybody's voice, but there are probably some niches that are a little more competitive than others, and might take a little bit longer for you to, quote-unquote, break into. So it kind of goes back to, what are you passionate about? The more unique the thing that you are passionate about, the easier it's going to be for you to persist and connect with your audience.
And a good example is, if you're passionate about travel, right, then there's a lot of travel blogs, a lot of travel Instagrams, whatever. But what if you were to say, I want to focus on best vacation spots in the Southeast, or best family budget friendly vacation spots, or I wouldn't recommend going into the Disney foray, because there's a ton of Disney travel bloggers out there. However, you can certainly, on the budget friendly piece of it, go how to do Disney for less than X amount of dollars, et cetera. So as you get fine-tune what you're doing and what you're talking about, it becomes easier to stand out. It's easier to stand out in a small crowd than it is to stand out in a large crowd.
Yeah, you can even do something in the travel realm, travel with pets, travel with specifically a specific breed of dog. The more unique it is, the easier it's going to be for you to connect with your audience.
All right. So the next tip that we have is authenticity. And authenticity, I think all of us have watched, sat through, read something that just felt off, that just felt canned, and that's not going to be sustainable. When you are passionate about something, going back to the first point of finding your niche, if it's something that you're naturally very passionate about, you're going to come across as very authentic. As Rob mentioned earlier, and I have said before myself, there's not a single topic in the entire world or universe that has not been covered. It's just absolutely impossible to find something that has not been covered by somebody, right? However, it's not been covered by you. So don't let a lot of people say, well, everybody's talked about, budget-friendly travel. Right, but you haven't, and once you develop your voice, your followers they trust you because you're authentic, and that's the whole thing, is building that trust, trusting your voice, and once you have that voice, it becomes very natural, and people will just naturally be drawn to you.
Right, you're building content based on your personal knowledge, so it just comes across much more authentically. It might be that you discovered something in your travels that appeals to you. That's part of what's going to appeal to your audience. It's not the overall, budget trip to Chattanooga, but it was the fact that you found this really neat pizza shop, or you found this really great romantic spot. That makes it more authentic and more worth you sharing and making it available to your audience and building an audience.
And on that note, the next point, which is know your audience and what makes them tick. As you get more familiar with who your followers are, you'll begin to notice what content you put out that resonates with them. You will see that certain things are just wildly popular and certain things that kind of fall flat. So as you're paying attention to that, obviously you want to go with what is wildly popular, because that's obviously resonating with your audience. If it falls flat, read the room, don't do it again. Or if you do, or put more emphasis on the things that perform really, really well. Find it, stick with it, and that becomes the point of where your followers and your audience kind of knows what to expect from you.
Yeah, absolutely. The insights are there, and they might wind up leading you in a way that you hadn't even predicted to go. I know as for myself, I started a blog eons ago, and what I found was there was particular content that people responded to, and it happened to be in the DIY space. And it wasn't something that when I started my blog I even intended to write about, but I was led to it by just doing one post and finding out that there was a lot more interest there.
And for me, when I was actively blogging, it was my very tongue-in-cheek parenting humor, because if anybody knows me personally, you know that I have a very sarcastic, dry sense of humor, and I have had a very, my girls are old enough now, just a very, straight and narrow type of parenting style. So it was like a no holds bar. And I know there were a couple of posts that I put out that caught the attention of some other bloggers that didn't like it because they were much more that nurturer. And it's not saying I'm not a nurturer, but I'm very much, this is my way or the highway kind of approach to parenting when my girls were younger. And so it's not gonna, if you're doing it right, you're probably gonna tick off some people.
Absolutely.
But that means you're being authentic. Trust your knowledge and your experience in your niche. Again, that goes back to finding something that you're passionate about. A lot of people tend to have impostor syndrome. They feel like, I'm putting my voice out there, I'm saying these things, and I really don't know what I'm talking about. But that's not true. You do because you've been doing it, and, so you need to trust yourself and trust in your ability and your knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is that, yeah, you've spent maybe even decades on some topic that you just love. And it's a lot easier to write about or share about or create about that topic than it is anything else that you see that might catch your eye as popular. And you just need to trust the fact that you're going to become the expert in this niche that's a subpart of something that you saw that was, hyper popular.
And on that note, make sure you're following people that do what you do, because and that's a point I'm going to make here in the next slide, but you're going to get ideas from anywhere. A big thing that I've seen, a trend that I don't really like, and it's not as big as it was, blogs are not necessarily the main vehicle anymore. A while ago they were the vehicle, but I'm starting to see, like with Instagram, obviously Instagram is like wildly popular, and I'm starting to see a lot more long form content in Instagram. So that's kind of an interesting trend to see. However, I also see a lot of people that don't interact with their audience, and that is a horrible, horrible mistake. Whether, if they're making comments, if they're posting comments, or they're tweeting or retweeting your information, you want to interact with them. It's a big mistake, because these are people that are following you. I mean, this is your audience. And I see a lot of influencers that don't do that.
Yeah.
And that's a grave mistake, in my opinion.
Absolutely, no question. You're putting yourself out there with the intent of connecting with an audience. It might be an audience of one or two to start with, but you definitely want to treat them the best way you know how.
So now let's talk about consistency. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Consistency is vital to your success as a content creator. Whether you are blogging, whether you're podcasting, whether you're doing video, set a schedule and stick to it. For instance, Rob and I just we just launched today the podcast companion to the conference, right? And at first we were all gung ho, we're like, we're going to do it every week. And I was like, pump the brakes. Because I know with everything we have going on in our lives, between work and personal lives, that we are setting ourselves up for failure to do that. So we committed to twice a month.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you're going to do it once a month, twice a month, every day of the week, depending on what your medium is. If it's Instagram, every day is not out of the question. I mean, that's a high volume medium to be, but whatever you decide, pick a schedule and stick to it. If you're, let's say you're on Instagram, you're going to I'm going to post Monday through Friday, but not Saturday and Sunday. That's fine. What you're doing is you're kind of subtly training your audience to know when to expect content from you. When I was actively blogging, I committed to myself to have 2 new blog posts a week. And I think I dropped them on Tuesday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Friday. And so people knew that on Tuesdays and Fridays, or whatever day it was, that I was going to be putting up new content. So on a platform like podcasting, if it's once a week, that's great. I mean, there are some that are out there every day. I mean, they're more like daily shows. I can't imagine trying to produce that much content on the podcast, but God bless.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't have that staff.
No. Yeah, it's interesting, because with consistency, your audience begins to understand and have an expectation. And I think it's important that you meet that expectation. Certainly, dependent on the platform, if you decide that you're going to post, you might try posting a couple different times at a couple of different days and see what happens. And then you might refine your content distribution model based on what kind of feedback you get after you experiment. I know that there's some that say, daily posts on Facebook, daily posts on Instagram are really great for it. and they're native posts, and that's part of the consistency. And certainly that's where we see things go. I know that when I blog more actively, I saw the traffic. I paid attention to the traffic, and I got more readers on Friday than any other day of the week.
Interesting.
And that was after experimenting with different days of the week, different times. I kind of got to the point where I assumed that audience really were more leisure time based and read more in their leisure time with the DIY content that I was posting.
Well, that would make sense for DIY
Yeah.
because you're leading into the weekend.
Right.
Where you can have that
Doing the
time.
research for
Yeah.
Friday, gonna shop Saturday morning, get started on the project.
Interesting. And one of the things I've noticed, and I've been not researching, but just kind of reading on, as it relates to podcasts. Folks used to say that they saw a huge spike in downloads early in the morning pre-COVID because people most frequently listen to podcasts on their commute.
Mm-hmm.
And now that there's no commute, it's like the numbers are all over the place. So it's, again, it just shows that there's that consistency thing. And so most podcast producers were making sure that their episodes dropped I think I was seeing the average peak time was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
Yeah, so they would make sure that it would drop 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. People would get up, they would download the podcast to get ready for the morning commute. So it's, just like everything else in 2020, it's a little different. So what Rob said is so true. It's like pay attention to the numbers, and you can get into your Google Analytics and see where certain things. If it's a podcast, you can see in the in your dashboard when downloads are happening, and pay attention to that, and follow the money, follow the numbers. Editorial calendars, believe it or not, an old school calendar to plot out. I do it with every single client of mine. I start with an annual calendar, which are very broad topics, and then we get a little bit more granular by the month, and then we get even more granular by the week. So you've got, plot it out. Leading into the whole ideas can come from anything. Ideas come at you from anywhere, and I guarantee you, I don't know about you, my best ideas do not come to me when I'm sitting in front of a computer. It's when I'm doing random things like taking a shower, washing the dishes, feeding the dogs, whatever. They just come just like out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you use a notes application in your phone or a piece of paper, I'm old school in that way. I mean, I love my technology, but at the same time, I'm also a pen to paper kind of person. So I just write my ideas down. There's scraps of paper everywhere. But whenever those ideas come to you, write them down. Mark Schaefer, actually, speaking of blogging gurus, he always recommended if you're inside of WordPress, just start a blog post and just put the title of it in there and then come back to it and actually later. And then you've got kind of like a treasure trunk of ideas and posts and content to work from.
That's interesting. I use Google Keep Notes for mine because I don't know whenever something strikes me. And if you, and then it's easy to transition off that and move to WordPress or whatever platform that I want to deploy content on. And not unlike you, ideas come to me from anywhere at any time. Yeah, the shower, getting ready was one of them.
And they tend to trickle it. So going back to the editorial calendar, once you start writing them down or typing them out, one will spiral off of the other. It's the whole mind map. I'm a big fan of mind maps. So, you have your broad topic of travel in the Southeast, and then you can spoke off of that and go Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and then from North Carolina, you can do the mountains, the triad, the coast, and then you just continue to spider web out for your content. And it believe it or not, if you just take a little bit of time at the beginning of the month or at the end of the month planning for the next month and do that, it will just make your job so much easier. Because to me, honestly, the most challenging part of creating content is coming up with what to write about.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that you might consider employing your content production is batching. And batching is this idea that you dedicate one day at the beginning of the month to do as much as you possibly can in preparation for that month, and then you kind of have a bank of content that you can deploy over that month and schedule it out. And then if you can double down on that and get a couple of months booked in the bank or in your scheduling app, you're even that much further ahead.
It's all about proper preparation. What's the 7 Ps?
Yeah.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
Ah, I like it.
So let's talk a little bit about social media and data. It's great for building your following, social media. And I don't know if it's here or in the next slide, but we've been laughing about one of my favorite quotes that actually got memed this week. Is it the next one? Okay, then I'll wait. You have to wait for that brilliant moment. I build a slide, Rob memorizes them.
Yeah.
But social media is a great way to get your content out to your followers, and most likely that's where you're going to find new followers, or new followers to your content, is by utilizing social media. And it's interesting because what used to be the key ones were Facebook and Twitter, and then LinkedIn, but now we have a whole suite of newer, not new anymore, but Instagram's still relatively new.
Yeah.
Same thing with Snapchat and TikTok.
Yep.
But all of these are just extra avenues to get your content in front of your existing audience, as well as find new people to absorb your content.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Not exactly.
Okay, so we'll leave it to, thanks Rob. Where's your audience the most? It depends on,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're using social media and you're using hashtags, you're going to find more people are going to pick up your content that you're producing.
Absolutely.
And you want to pay attention to what hashtags you use and how often you use them and where they perform the best. Maybe they work better on TikTok than they do on Instagram. It just depends on your audience and who you're producing content for.
And know where your audience is. So, for instance, if your target audience are, Gen Z, they're not on Facebook. I don't think most of them, unless their parents tell them to go to Facebook, most of Gen Z is not even on Facebook.
I think most of Gen Z is on Facebook to check on who's there,
Right.
not to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not going to see your content. Now, if your audience is Gen X, there's a really solid chance that they are all, especially female Gen Xers and Boomers, are all on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great platform to promote your content. Twitter is still my favorite, but that's just me. But that's more Gen X, Gen Z. Most Boomers are not on Twitter.
No,
I think Boomers pretty much live
on Facebook.
on Facebook.
Yeah.
Judging from my mom,
Yeah.
I would say that's true. So you have to, and then going back to like Instagram. Instagram obviously is a much larger audience, but again, that's Gen X, Gen Z, millennials. Those are the ones that tend to be on Instagram, Twitter. Snapchat's definitely very strong with Gen Z as well as TikTok, although quite a few, thanks to Rona, millennials as well as Gen X are also on TikTok. So, always be looking for, looking at the analytics, looking at the data. You can tell where traffic is coming from. If we're speaking specifically on blogging, on the written word, you can tell where the traffic is coming from. Same thing with YouTube, podcasts.
And if you have a way, through Linktree or a link off your social media profile, you can see where traffic is coming from if you have something else to pay attention to. I guess this last point, if you're doing long form content in a traditional blog, or you're using YouTube and you're doing transcripts, you'll hear a lot about SEO, and while it's great to keep it in mind, your reader should come first. You should look to serve your reader first and the search engines secondarily. The search engines will help you get more readers, but if you're just doing it to supplicate the search engines, you're going to turn off your readers. You're using what might amount to like sixth grade language and repeating phrases that are going to turn off traditional readers.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the people that are writing to bump up their SEO. It's just, it just doesn't come through as authentic.
Yeah.
It sounds like a machine, and that's not gonna last long. And if you're looking to actually monetize any of your content, there's a fine balance there, because you definitely need to, when you're working with brands or you're working with influencer management companies, they are numbers driven. I mean, it's a fact, they are numbers driven. But there's a way, it's just, think of it as a marathon and not a sprint. I mean, if you're producing great content, you're being authentic and you're being consistent, the numbers are gonna find you. I mean, they're going to organically grow. Are there things that you can do to build your audience? Absolutely. But that's true with anyone and any business that they're in. So it's not just about the numbers. And one of the things that I tell my clients when I work with them, like, it's better to have, I'd rather have 10,000 engaged than 100,000 followers with no engagement.
No question. Yeah, that's the same for everybody that I advise. You're better off having a smaller, more engaged audience than any huge number of followers. It works out way better.
And I think most everyone, follows somebody, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, that you can tell that the only reason they're doing it is for the promotion. They're doing it because they're monetizing it, and it just comes across as it falls flat. And I know that I have stopped following certain people because every time I watched or read or engaged with any of their content, it felt like a sales, it felt like a commercial.
Yeah.
So here's my big quote: bake once, eat 5 times. So one of the beautiful things about creating content is your goal should be to create a great piece of content. And from that great piece of content, you can do so many things with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can break off snippets of it and make graphics for it, that you can post on Twitter, that you can post on Instagram, that you can post on wherever, on Facebook. You can also make a YouTube. You can make a video out of it. You can make, whether that video goes on TikTok, whether it goes on YouTube, you can make a long video. So let's say we have a blog post. You can turn that blog post, that long form content, into a YouTube video. You can also turn it into a podcast if you've got a podcast.
Yeah, there's absolutely infinite number of ways you can work this. You could start with a YouTube video, and from that make a podcast, and make social media posts, and make make long form blog posts. And there's an infinite number of ways to bake it once and eat multiple times.
Take snippets from it that are tweetable. There's several plugins, but if you're blogging, there's a click to tweet that'll grab certain points, and then you can make, and that way, like, if I'm reading your blog, and if there's a true gem in there, there's a plugin that I can tweet that out. It goes back to the work smarter, not harder. For instance, going back to our podcast, we did it on Zoom, so we had the video of it, and we made the decision that the video portion of our podcast is going on our YouTube channel, and that's going to be the unedited version, which is quite funny. So I'm like, I'm not going to edit this 100 times. I'm going to edit it once, and that's for the podcast. The rest of it, it'll just be fun content for the YouTube channel. So, when you start thinking that way, you know that there are certain areas where you can pull, a 60-second clip out to upload a video up to Twitter, to Instagram. Same thing with TikTok. I uploaded the soundbite from the podcast into our TikTok
Uh-huh.
now it's the only thing on our TikTok right now, but that's gonna change.
Yeah.
But at least there's something
Start
there.
somewhere.
There's something there.
Yeah.
Throwback post,
We have a question.
we have a question,
Okay.
yay.
From Jennifer Biggs. We're talking a lot about long form content. How long is long? Can you go too long?
No,
No.
no, you can't, it used to be you could, but now we used to strive for 500 words
Yeah.
in a blog post, and now they are actually saying it's like 3,000 words is
you want-
optimal.
Yeah, completely answer the question that you raised with the topic. Make it as authoritative as possible. And then that leads you down the path of not only creating that post, but creating other supporting posts if we're talking about long form content. And then the whole strategy of interlinking them, and then, you become ranked for this stuff that you know so well.
And speaking of like another little tip is, as you're thinking of things to put on your editorial calendar, because of voice search, all of us using Alexa or Siri, etc., write in the form of how people would ask a question. One of the things when people come to me, I'm like, what do I write about? And I'm like, okay, you're I don't know, insert, if you're a technical, whatever. What are the top 10 questions that you get asked the most frequently? What are your FAQs? And once you come up with those, then those are 10 topics immediately that you can write on. And you want to write it in the form of, hey Siri, where can I find, I just activated this. Where can I find an affordable place to take my family on vacation in North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's ways to kind of format the post so that it's easy to navigate into those subtopics. So when you're talking about long form content.
You activated SIRI and we've lost audio. Can you hear us now?
Leave it to Kristen.
Hold on. It's me.
Won't get that.
Okay, can you hear us now? Okay. Yeah,
We're back.
I think she activated the SIRI.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
See, at home I'm used to saying, should we do something with, and I only refer to her as A. For that same reason. But I'm not used to using S because I use A all the time.
Right.
Sorry.
No problem.
So what were we talking about?
We were talking about this we were talking about long form, answering the question for long form content.
So yeah, no, you can't have it too long because probably because there is so much content out there
Yeah.
that the longer it is, the better it is, because it's gonna usually people are looking for insight and help, etc.
Yeah.
So they want something. Google gives higher authority to those longer form pieces of content.
And if you post a long form piece of content and then notice your competitors are doing the same or similar thing, then you're definitely on to something. Because I noticed with my home improvement content that other sites that, for example, sold flooring, because I did a flooring post, copied my strategy, and when I saw them begin to rank for the same similar keywords, I was like, okay, so they saw me, they knew it was working. I'm just going to keep going. And so that's how you can validate kind of your strategy and your tactic, how it's working.
So yeah, and the other thing too with the content is most, unless it's very specific to a time, it's going to end up being evergreen content.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice because then you can, some of my most popular, most highest ranking blog posts are posts that I wrote 8 years ago. And it's just interesting, and I know one of them was like about cotillion. When my oldest daughter started with cotillion, and I think they did that in the 6th grade, 7th grade, and she's 22 now. So it's one of those things, it's like what to expect at cotillion. It's just, I mean, there's plenty of them that are like that I'm like, and I know some of the others that still rank are, letters, a letter to my 5th grade graduate, or a letter to my, incoming senior, things like that, because they're sentimental pieces. And those are, what should I say to, again, think about what people Google in your field, and then write content based on that.
Yeah, and write about the things that only you can write about. Just, you can compare some things that only you can compare, because they, for competitive reasons, can't be compared by one of your competitors. It's a great strategy to gain some traffic for people kind of looking at comparing and contrasting solutions or products or services.
And one thing I want to throw out there that is not even on here is, in addition to your blog, if you're writing on a blog, definitely look at contributing to Medium, places like Medium, because that is just, it's easier to monetize on Medium than it is on your own blog, because if you're consistently producing on Medium, you're going to end up getting put into different categories, and it's such a great way to stand out as a leader in whatever industry you are, or whatever thing that you're passionate about. And it's free to post there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know I cross-post a lot of they even have an import that it'll come up and say, originally posted on, whatever blog I happen to be posting from. So Medium is a great way to increase your rankings as well on Google.
Yeah, same for LinkedIn.
Yep. All right. That's it for our slides. Those are our 5 points. So again, we'll go through them again. Bake once, eat 5 times. Social media and data. Consistency. Authenticity. And finding your niche. So now we have plenty of time for questions and to ramble on. Say something, Rob.
Just start.
Anyone have questions,
Just start.
comments? Share your own advice?
My own advice?
No, I mean,
Oh,
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, I just did.
I'm talking to the people.
Yeah, what have you done that's worked?
Exactly.
Don't everyone speak at once.
Yeah,
Or
no,
do. It's fine. Fight it out.
Hey, I wanted to interject something. It's Anne Marie. What I find interesting is that I'm quite an illustrator, and it comes easy to me to share my, my work and what I'm looking, to show people what I do. But what I found with a personal Instagram that I'm now jumping over to have a business Instagram is, and I didn't anticipate, is that you have interactions with other people who are interested in what you do, but they're also curious about other illustrators, and will offer you support and advice. So I think what we shouldn't forget, if anybody feels intimidated by this, is sure you're getting your stuff out there, but also it's a connection to other people who are interested in what you do, and that will ultimately give you more ideas also on how you share your content. So your steps, your 5 steps are great, and they give me a framework. But I think what I'm also looking for, and what I think you can do with these 5 steps, is you will get feedback from people, and it will connect you to other people who are passionate about what you do, and generates more ideas for you. So once you get started, I think you've tapped into what people will respond to, and you will get ideas from other people. So when you said that it's so important for you to respond to people who are following you or who are interested in what you do, also tap them for ideas. And that's a plus that you don't even realize when you get into it. So, I have to get out visual representations of what I do, but what I respond to most to is when people start sharing their ideas and their feedback and how that plugs into other artists or other consumers. So, thank you for the outline of how to get started with this.
And that's a great point, Anne Marie. And I thought I had it in there, like a bullet point in there, but find your tribe.
Yeah.
Us OG bloggers that have been doing it for like 10, 15 years. It was back in the day, one of the metrics that brands and companies gauged to work with us was the number of comments. So I know I still belong to several Facebook private groups that are content creators, and we'll see certain things like, do you need help with promoting a post, or where do you need help? And finding your tribe and people who do the same thing as you is really, really important. Not just in addition to the ideas, but also just for support. I mean, because everybody's going to get burnout. Everybody's going to get burnout, and you need your own little rah-rah squad, if you will, that can kind of pump you up and be like, all right, that's cool. Take a week off, catch your breath. Here's some ways I have found to get motivated again, or here's this, or here's that. And then also to share blog posts or share content with their audience. And once you have that momentum, there's a huge benefit to that.
Yeah, I definitely have taken pauses in my content creation career several times for a variety of reasons, but always come back around to it. And it seems that that pause, that creative pause, energized me to continue on.
And none of us know everything, but
No.
collectively we do. So if you've got that tribe, again, whether it's in a private Facebook group or whatever, and you have a problem, you can put it out there, and it's a it's really nice because it's a no judgment zone, because you're not alone. I mean, just like there's no piece of content that's never been written, there's no problem that hasn't been had before, and somebody out there has most likely found a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Yep. I love having, even, I have my co-working operators tribe in several Facebook groups. One's about content and others are for, owners' issues. And something I really enjoy and I think is important with social media tribe is we now have developed a really age-diverse team here at Flywheel. And I love kind of watching the input from, younger folks on staff who just have grown up with it and it's just intuitive, right? And they know what appeals to their age group.
Right.
And then, me, who is always saying, for example, can you make the font bigger on the Instagram post? Because our members who are my age probably can't read that. So, because I can. And so I think having a tribe that's really age diverse in this sort of medium, right, is really important too. So,
Yeah.
And we're fortunate to have Kristen joining us now. So we have the OGs, bloggers before blogging was cool, which was an inspiration to me. When my kids were little and she was doing that, I was like, wow, that's a thing. So she was the first, and it's still continuing. So much evolution and learning to do. Patrick, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, so first off, thanks for this. It's interesting. I feel like you guys have corrected some of the things I learned 5 or 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
my biggest lesson from this is it's never changing landscape on what works and what doesn't work. Because I was just sidebarring with Jennifer saying, oh, I guess I'm wrong about that. I clearly heard that 10 years ago, thought it was still true.
It was true 10 years ago. I mean, really. I mean, if you got 500 words in a post, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So my question is, if Jennifer and to some extent myself, we've been blogging on the Impostor site for about a year, and I feel like it's very young. I know my last one was 2 years for traction with our content, and so you guys kind of have a whole bunch of things about this works better in this situation, this works better in this situation. So, for example, the link to the post, when you post, and a lot provide money resources and only want to log in a number of times per month or whatever. How do you decide sort of where to take your best guess first on when to post, when to post, all those factors that go into that? What kind of time frame?
You want to take it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and where a lot of content creators and businesses find themselves at the very beginning. Where do I go from here? I think if you've got the benefit of a few customers, certainly getting in front of them and asking them for what their concerns are is a great way to get started. Certainly with that policy post you saw take off, you were able to somehow get the insight of a supervisor on the shop floor, or a worker on the shop floor, or CTO or CMO or CFO that was grappling with this issue on the shop floor. And it's getting in front of them on a regular basis. Maybe for Ampergy, maybe it's even a matter of you interview them, and that interview becomes your post. You then, from that post, figure out that you're getting tons of comments on this one subsection of this interview, and then there you go. There's your next series of blog posts. There's lots of ways you can come at this.
And it's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, I would say, give yourself a good 3 months of consistency, and at the same time, remember, bake it once and eat it 5 times. Just get in the habit of each time that you do a long form piece of content that you're creating the little caveats. And it's always going to, one of the things we're going to talk about in the conference, and that I see a lot, especially of Gen Z, is the mothership is your website or your blog. And so all things are going to, for the most part, lead to that. And some people want to argue with me, I don't know why, that they don't need a website. But as we saw several years ago with Vine, these little, I'm not saying, who knows what is going to happen? I mean, obviously Facebook is not a site as much as it is a way of life, right? So, and now that Facebook owns Instagram, probably those two, it's going to be pretty hard for those two to go away. But there's nothing saying this. I mean, look how close it came for TikTok going away a couple of weeks ago. So if people are building their fame or building their followers on a certain platform, everything should lead back to your site or your blog. On your Instagram, whether you have a link tree into your Instagram or whether, but it should go back to your site so you can see where this traffic is coming from. And most of us are doing a lot of this for professional or personal professional branding, and you want to have a way for people to find their way back to you. So where I'm going with that is like creating the memes, creating the short little pieces of video, lead them back to your site. And then that way you can see in the analytics, where's this traffic coming from? And if you see that a lot of it's coming from Instagram, all of a sudden, okay, here's the blog post, but I'm going to spend a lot more time promoting it on Instagram than I am on, say, Twitter.
Yeah, and I'd say also related to that is that there's absolutely no way that you shouldn't have a website, because we have no control and no ownership of any of this social media. So effectively, we're sharecroppers. We're digital sharecroppers. And we can put that out there to get attention, and that's the best that we can do. But to bring them back to your website, get them to sign up for a newsletter where they get new posts or other information from them is going to probably serve your business best.
Shelby, you posted a question.
Questions in the chat board. Can I ask a couple more quick ones?
Yeah.
So one is, you mentioned Medium, and I know that's something that's been floating around there for a while. If you're producing weekly content, for example, I know the rule used to be don't post on Medium the same time that you post on the blog. Is that true? And no?
No, not anymore. Yeah, it used to be that Google would slap you down, and Rob can probably speak on this more, but one of the things, if you import a blog, if you use the import function on Medium, you just basically put the link to your post on your website, And at the very bottom of it, it will give credit to where it came from. This post was originally posted, this article was originally posted on 4 Hens and a Rooster, or, just Kristen, whatever, on February 2nd, 2016.
Yeah.
So a related question, one of the things that I was talking about was, a lot of this is sort of, you can see kind of commentary out of your life, and I came with you not aware of the and so for me, I'm not a fan of Facebook, like I don't want to log on anymore unless it helps me find out what your page is. What do you think about Facebook for B2B? So
LinkedIn.
a company like Ainbinder focuses on talking to your plant managers, for example. Do you post that stuff on Facebook?
No. No, leave it alone. I'd put it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Twitter.
Okay, that's what we're doing. We're doing LinkedIn and Twitter today. I feel like that's probably
I'd say it depends. I think it's worth an experiment.
Well, if they've got a page, a
Yeah.
Facebook business page, sure, but, that's just to give you extra,
Yeah, extra attention.
organic SEO.
Yeah, and you get, well, then you boost it to plant, people that with the job title of plant manager, and see what happens. It's worth $5 a day to find out if it gets any traction. Boost it for $5 one day.
I'll stop there.
It's Shelby's turn. Okay, I'll be Shelby. How do you all feel about using social media for microblogging or using it to post long-form content?
Well, that's what that's one of the things that we talk, I guess I don't care about that,
Yeah.
is I'm starting to see on Instagram that, especially with your influencers on Instagram, they're starting to use that, the comment section as a form of long-form content, or at least long-form for Instagram. Whereas instead of just being short little captions, you're seeing, I'll use it as an influencer. If there's a particular picture, they kind of give you more of the backstory. It's almost like a micro blog post.
Yeah, a couple hundred words.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad, or it depends on who you are?
It's just a new trend. I don't think I haven't personally done it, so the short form content on it, because I don't necessarily use Instagram like personally as my brand. I use it more just personally. Obviously it's working because that the way I look at it is I'm seeing it more and more frequently, and so I think what's happening is they have a captive audience there, so they're going to get all of the information they can into that piece of it.
That brings up an important point, that each of these social media sites want you to create on their site.
Yep.
They don't want you to link out. They think about it from their perspective.
The sticky factor.
They want you to stick to their platform. So it makes sense that on Facebook you make it a longer post. You don't link out, except maybe in the first comment. And then on Instagram, you make it a longer post and you say, hit my link in my bio. And that link changes as you post new content.
Which is why you sometimes will see, we'll use Facebook first, that if it's a blogger that you follow, they'll kind of give you, a fairly lengthy comment, and then you always see either link in comments, because it's kind of tricking the algorithms of these sites. Because like what Rob said, Facebook doesn't want you to leave Facebook.
No.
Facebook wants you to stay there, just like every single one of them. The exception to that, I would say, is Twitter, because that's more link driven. So when you see people say link in bio or link in first comments, is because then you're clicking in the comments, you're not clicking in that main post. So, and the same thing with hashtag stuffing. You see that more on Instagram. It's starting to happen in the first comment as opposed to in the post itself.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We are out of time. It is 9:33. Thanks
Wow.
for staying the
Wow.
extra 3 minutes, unless someone has a really burning desire to ask the question. Nope, okay.
Thanks, everybody.